Every month, Doordash delivers to millions of hungry customers and helps restaurants expand their reach. Since starting in 2013, the company has grown at a staggering pace and has become one of the hottest startups to emerge from Silicon Valley. But what most people don't realize is that the seeds of its massive success were planted decades before and thousands of miles away. From the streets of Tiananmen Square to the cornfields of Illinois, this is a company built on the sacrifice and determination of a woman who would move thousands of miles from home and give up being a doctor to wait on tables so that her child would rise from washing dishes to making billions. This is the story of a mother and her son and their journey towards creating one of the most valuable tech companies in the world. A company that has transformed the restaurant industry, helps deliver food to millions of people, and creates jobs for thousands more. And it all started with a family that gave up everything to pursue the dream of a better future. Despite coming to America with only a few $100s, the family worked hard and persevered and rebuilt their lives in a new country. Eventually, the son would go on to graduate from some of the most prestigious schools in the world, but never strayed far from his family's roots in the restaurant business. The timeless lessons and wisdom his mother taught him would set him on a trajectory to create Doordash, now a $30 billion company with huge potential, but with its fair share of controversies. This is the incredible story of Tony Xu and how he co-founded the largest food delivery business in America. Tony was born in 1985 in Nanjing, China, a city 200 miles west of Shanghai. His father was a rising professor at a local university, while his mother was a new doctor working to establish her practice. Life was modest but promising for the Xu family during a time when the country was undergoing significant social, political, and economic change. During the 1980s, the Chinese Communist Party relaxed their controls and allowed the country to be a more open and free society. However, by 1989, those changes came to an abrupt halt as the nation quickly escalated into turmoil and bloodshed. The Tiananmen Square massacre changed everything in the spring of that year. The communist government cracked down on pro-democratic protests, many of which were led by students who were discontent with corruption, the lack of job opportunities, and disillusioned with the country's future. Against this backdrop, Tony's parents made the difficult decision to leave the country, leaving behind their families, friends, their home, and their careers. Tony's father thought that pursuing more education would give them the best chance to establish themselves in a new country, and American universities were the most attractive at the time. Even though he was already a professor, he applied and was accepted into a PhD program for aeronautical engineering at the University of Illinois. By the fall of 1989, when Tony was 5 years old, his family arrived in the US and settled in Champaign, Illinois, with big hopes and dreams. However, their excitement and optimism in a foreign land quickly turned to desperation. With only $200 in the bank, the family's struggle had just begun. As Tony's father began his studies, it became clear that he needed more money to pay for his classes. He just didn't have enough. So he swallowed his pride, pulled up his sleeves, and started working as a full-time waiter at an on-campus restaurant. Between working and studying, he barely spent time with his family during those grueling years. But the cost for Tony's mother was even more humiliating. While Julie was a fully licensed doctor in China with years of training, none of that mattered now. Her education, experience, and credentials were worthless in the US. While her husband was toiling in his classes, she had to work to feed her family. So she followed in her husband's footsteps and started as an entry-level waitress for a local Chinese restaurant. A talented doctor who just months before was treating illnesses and saving lives was now wiping tables and mopping floors. And this wasn't just for a month or a year or two. For the next 12 years, Julie worked at the restaurant and juggled 2 other jobs. And in the meantime, she tried her best to give 5-year-old Tony a normal life. He spent his early childhood attending public school, followed his mom to work, and had a lot of free time on his hands, which meant one thing. He watched a lot of TV. In fact, he got his American name from watching Tony Maselli on his favorite TV show, Who's the Boss?
I'm Tony Maselli. I'm here about the job.
But more importantly, Tony didn't know how to speak English, so watching TV was one of the only means he had to pick up the language. His elementary school didn't provide help for foreign students to learn English, and his parents couldn't afford a tutor. And there was a lot his family couldn't afford. Tony would share that his family was so poor that his mom would take him to McDonald's only on special occasions. Eating hamburgers and fries was a luxury his family could buy only once every couple of months. But his upbringing during those early years were pivotal to who he'd become in the decades ahead. Tony's time spent with her at her job became a masterclass in how restaurants worked. She started involving him in the business as he got older because she needed the help. He first took on some of the dishwasher shifts and bussed tables after school. Later on, as she took on more responsibilities managing the restaurant, she in turn involved him even more. Whatever his mom needed, whether it was fixing an appliance, restocking ingredients, troubleshooting the credit card machine, he adopted her values of working hard, learning by trial and error, and never giving up. But one key lesson that seemed uneventful at the time would prove to be invaluable in the years to come. Tony was good with numbers from a young age, and Julie would often invite him to help with the bookkeeping. The exposure to how the revenue and expenses played out in the operation of the restaurant taught him early on that a restaurant's to-go order is often more profitable than their in-store business. This and many other lessons his mom taught him would later prove to be decisive in identifying the market opportunity that would become Doordash. Tony continued to help her until he graduated high school. He did very well academically and was accepted into the University of California at Berkeley and studied engineering. Once he graduated, he worked for eBay and PayPal before pursuing an MBA at Stanford Business School. It was during this time that he met his future co-founders Evan, Stanley, and Andy, who all shared a desire to support small businesses in their community. They didn't initially consider creating a food delivery business, but instead were focused on creating apps to help solve problems for small business owners as smartphones were rising in popularity. As the story goes, they developed a prototype app and sought feedback from an owner of a small macaroon bakery they were working with. To their disappointment, they realized their work wasn't helping solve her most important problems. As they were leaving, the manager named Chloe shared with them a thick booklet. It contained pages and pages of delivery orders she had to cancel. She shared that it drove her crazy that she had no means to fulfill them. Right then and there, Tony and his team had their light bulb moment. He remembered the potential of takeout orders for restaurants, which likely meant she was losing out on a lot of profitable orders. Within several weeks, the team interviewed hundreds of small business owners in the Bay Area, and they kept hearing the same thing. Businesses wanted to deliver, but had no easy way to do it. But the guys weren't 100% convinced the demand for delivery was there, so they tested the idea. On January 12, 2013, Tony and his team launched PaloAltoDelivery.com, a scrappy website built within hours on a Saturday afternoon. The site had PDF menus of several local restaurants and a Google Voice number. To their surprise, they received their first order just 45 minutes after launching. After that, the phone kept ringing and orders kept coming in. The four of them delivered the first 200 orders themselves before they had to hire delivery drivers. Within weeks, their experiment proved the demand was there and things escalated pretty quickly after that. Within months, they applied and were accepted into the Y Combinator program, arguably the most successful startup accelerator in the world. Through the program, Tony and his team received $120,000 in seed capital, and the company changed its name to Doordash. By September, the company received $2.4 million in investment capital as the company grew at a breakneck pace. By March 2018, a $535 million investment by SoftBank valued the company at a staggering $1.4 billion. Then, in December 2020, the company listed on the New York Stock Exchange, making Tony and his co-founders newly minted billionaires. However, despite its success, the company has been the center of controversies and criticisms over the years, particularly around its relationship with its drivers. In July 2019, the company was criticized for its tipping policy that redirected driver tips to fulfill the company's guaranteed minimum per order. Furthermore, in 2021, Doordash drivers went on strike to protest the lack of tip transparency and for higher pay. There are also ongoing legal battles regarding the classification of drivers and whether they should be considered employees or independent contractors, which has big implications for the company. Despite these issues, Doordash has changed the restaurant industry forever in making delivery service accessible for thousands of businesses and millions of customers. Its success can be traced back to the values and lessons Tony learned from his mom. To this day, he often credits her as the inspiration for why Doordash exists. Thanks for watching.